Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to our explainer, where we take complex ideas and break them down so they actually make sense. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating diagnosis of the modern internet user, the digital search for identity and belonging. Now, we aren't looking at the tech today, no algorithms or code. Instead, we're impartially exploring the human behaviors, those secret drives and the deep cravings that dictate exactly how we form modern communities online.
To start things off, we really have to ask ourselves a fundamental question. Why do we join digital tribes? Think about it. If you spend literally any amount of time online, you see it absolutely everywhere. People don't just casually browse anymore, right? They align. They align fiercely with specific online communities, causes, and factions. But what actually drives this? Are we just naturally communal creatures finding new ways to gather, or is there a specific, uniquely modern deficit that we're trying to fill the second we log on? Well, the text we're analyzing today offers a very specific and honestly quite profound answer to this exact question.
The author's foundational premise here is remarkably straightforward. Quote, "People are craving for attention and be identified." That is the absolute starting point of this entire theory. The author frames the modern digital user not as someone who's simply looking for information or a quick laugh, but as someone driven by a deep, almost biological hunger, a craving. It's a craving to be seen, to be acknowledged, and most importantly, to be given an identity. By establishing this premise, the source material sets us up to view all of our subsequent online behavior, not just as random scrolling, but as targeted attempts to satisfy this really intense craving for identification.
Section 1. The craving for attention. The visible surface. To really understand how this author breaks down the modern internet, we're going to use an iceberg model, starting right up top with the noisy, visible stuff we see on the internet every single day.
So up here on the visible surface, the author observes a rapid cultural shift. On one side, we have topics that, according to the text, were not nearly as dominantly relevant just a few short years back. On the other side, we have what the author characterizes as the new hype, specifically mentioning widespread, really intense online focuses on issues like climate change, LGBTQ topics, and a whole host of other current events. Now, to be absolutely clear, the author is not making a value judgment on the validity of these topics, and neither are we. Rather, the text neutrally observes the sheer velocity and volume of the hype surrounding them. The core argument here is that the sudden, intense magnification of these topics is a direct symptom of that craving for identity we just talked about. Basically, people are grabbing onto these prominent cultural conversations as vehicles to achieve visibility.
Section 2. Finding significance virtually. The mechanism. Now we're transitioning just below the surface of our iceberg to explore exactly how the author believes internet users are finding their identity.
Let's move to and see how this builds. Exactly how does the author believe internet users are converting these popular topics into a personal sense of identity? Well, the author outlines a very clear psychological pipeline across 3 distinct steps. Step 1 starts internally, feeling insecurity and a lack of identity. This right here is the catalyst. It's a personal void. Step 2 is the action, associating with a specific topic. The user takes that internal insecurity and attaches it to an external, highly visible topic, like the ones we just saw. They become a champion or fierce critic of a specific cause. And finally, step 3 is the result, indulging in group thinking. By associating with the topic, the user becomes part of a group, effectively trading their individual insecurity for the safety and momentum of a collective mindset. This pipeline is literally the engine of the author's entire theory. The text specifically mentions that many young people, in particular, are finding their importance virtually by becoming part of a community simply to voice their opinion. But the author warns that this very often leads straight to groupthink. Groupthink is defined as the practice of thinking or making decisions as a group, often at the expense of individual identity or independent thought. It's a fascinating paradox, really. Think about it. Users log on because they lack an identity, they join a group to find one, but in doing so, they adopt the collective groupthink and potentially lose whatever independent identity they had left. They're joining these virtual communities just to have a platform to voice opinions and feel like they belong to a larger collective.
And how exactly is this belonging measured? What's the currency of this new identity? According to the text, it all boils down to this incredibly fragile metric, the likes and dislikes of others. The author states that young people are finding their excitement and their significance strictly through these digital validations. It's not about intrinsic self-worth anymore. It's entirely crowdsourced. If you get likes, boom, your identity is validated. If you get dislikes, it's immediately threatened. It's an incredibly volatile way to build a sense of self since it's completely dependent on the ever-shifting moods of the digital crowd.
Section 3. The root of the hype. The depths. So the crucial point is why?
Why would millions of people subject themselves to such a fragile system of finding self-worth? Let's go deeper.
At the absolute bottom of our iceberg, the text isolates three incredibly heavy root causes: powerlessness, hopelessness, helplessness. Let those words just sink in for a second. This is the darkest, deepest part of the author's psychological diagnosis. The author is claiming that all of this hyper-relevant online activism, all the digital tribalism, the intense groupthink, and that desperate chasing of likes and dislikes, all of it is ultimately stemming from these three dark feelings. The theory posits that the digital world we've built is largely a trauma response to a physical world where individuals feel they have absolutely no power, no hope, and no help. The loud, incredibly opinionated online user is, at their core, feeling entirely vulnerable offline.
Section 4. The illusion of control. The core diagnosis. Now we reach the final piece of the author's thesis, connecting that deep feeling of helplessness to the way people try to curate their real-world lives through virtual tribes.
You see, if the offline world leaves you feeling powerless, the online world offers a seductive, carefully designed illusion that you are actually in the driver's seat. It all stems from a final diagnosis, perfectly captured in this quote: the feeling that they do not have control over their life. This brilliantly illustrates the ultimate tragedy of the text theory. The craving for digital attention, the fierce alignment with trending social causes, the indulgence in groupthink, it's all framed as a highly sophisticated coping mechanism. When a person cannot control their real-world circumstances, their finances, their future, or their physical environment, they pivot. Actually, scratch that. It's more like they escape. They escape to a digital realm where they can control their avatar, they can tightly control the opinions they project, and they can seemingly control their social standing by aligning with the right group. But according to the author, it is merely a substitute for genuine, real-world agency.
So we've mapped the author's theory from the visible hype all the way down to the deepest feelings of powerlessness. And honestly, it leaves us with this final, vital question to reflect on. When we log on and passionately engage in the discourse of the day, are we truly just voicing our opinions, or are we just desperately searching for a sense of control? It's a powerful lens through which to view not just society's digital footprint, but our very own. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning the structures around you, and I'll see you next time.